It is now.
For our readers, please speak slowly and be close to your microphone. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our bi-monthly Foundations meeting of the Lppbbsg Primary Purpose Big Book Study Group. We are glad you're here. My name is Trish, and I am an alcoholic.
Let's open this meeting with a moment of silence, followed by the set-aside prayer, which Trish is posting now.
God, please set aside everything I think I know about myself. The 12 steps, the big book, the meetings, my disease. But most especially, God, please set aside everything I think I know about you, so that I may have an open mind and a new experience with all these things. Please let me see the truth.
And our preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and to help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
And the Lppbbsg Primary Purpose Big Book Study Group mission statement: to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous through our group, to carry the message of the Big Book to treated and untreated alcoholics, to help them find the spiritual solution outlined in our basic text and join the first 100 to become recovered. There is no cure for alcoholism, but we can become recovered with the AA Big Book and 1940s style Big Book sponsorship. That is the purpose of this group. May you join us on the road of happy destiny.
Somehow we flip-flopped it right off the cuff, didn't we? Just a quick note. For those of you who have never been to a Foundations meeting, this is a quick hopscotch through the book. It takes us about 40 minutes. Please feel free to follow along, and it is a great thing, not only for newcomers to have some understanding points in the book, but also for those of us who work with others as some hot spots to help another alcoholic out. So, go ahead, Trish.
From the preface: because this book has become the basic text for our society and has helped such large numbers of alcoholic men and women to recovery, there exists strong sentiment against any radical changes being made to it. Therefore, the first portion of this volume, describing the AA recovery program, has been left largely untouched.
We want them to know what alcoholism is, what the solution is, and how to take the action that is necessary to avoid death or insanity by drinking. For example, how to get from the problem to the solution. And we're going to have a couple of readers tonight. I believe Sassy and Kat are going to help us out tonight. And so, for Jim and Lisa, enjoy the entertainment. It's a really fun show.
And if you have your book, we're going to start out in the foreword to the first edition, page XIII. First published in 1939, and then was introduced by stating, Kat, could you please read the whole first paragraph, and then we will dissect it.
Give everybody time to get there. They're still turning pages.
We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. We think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person. And besides, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all.
Thank you. And could you reread that first line, please?
We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body.
Thank you. The first sentence tells us who authored the basic text for Alcoholics Anonymous.
And Sassy, could you please read us the second line?
On page XII.
Yep. To show other.
Sorry. I'm lost.
Forward to the first edition, first paragraph.
XIII. Second sentence. Go ahead, you read again.
To show
We of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Next sentence.
To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book.
The second sentence tells us why they went to the trouble to publish the basic text. Some of this stuff you guys that we read, you will not see. You'll go, where the hell are they getting that from?
And Kat, the third line, please.
For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary.
The third sentence suggests that the big book is all we will ever need to be successful in sobriety.
And Sassy, would you read the fourth and fifth lines, please?
We think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person.
The fourth and fifth sentences tell us that the big book is also for those that care about us.
And Kat, the sixth line, please.
And besides, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all.
The sixth sentence is supported by the fact that the big book has given birth to over 200 anonymous fellowships that have nothing to do with drinking.
And if you happen to be in our pages tonight will be from the fourth edition. If you happen to be using a third edition, it will be one page back from the page that we give you. So from page XIV, give everybody a second to change to that. The only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. Traditions 3 and 5. We have lost our understanding of honest by the time we decide to come to AA, so that the requirement has been eliminated. But if a person is serious about living sober, they had better have an honest desire to stop drinking and to be willing to follow the directions in the big book.
And the forward to the second edition, it gives us a historical account of the first 20 years of our history. How Bill found Dr. Bob, how they got busy looking for other alcoholics to try to help, how their success attracted the attention of some of our leading citizens, how we received some very favorable publicity, for example, Jack Alexander's article, and how the onset of new prospects forced Bill to develop the traditions. And then we hammer out the statement on page XX.
If everybody would like to turn to page XX, it will be the last page of the forward to the second edition. Gotta love that telemarketers always think meeting time is the time to call. Of alcoholics who came to AA and really tried, 50% got sober at once and remained that way. 25 sobered up after some relapses, and among the remainder who stayed on with AA showed improvement. Other thousands came to a few AA meetings and at first decided they didn't want the program, but great number of these, about 2 out of 3, began to return as time passed. So 75% plus got sober and remained that way. And just as a side note, in the early 1940s, the Cleveland groups were running at a 92% success rate due to using Big Book sponsorship.
Then Bill published the 12 and 12 in 1953. And by 1965, our success rate had dropped to 50%. Unfortunately, many newcomers are encouraged to try to use the 12 and 12 as their source of direction. Bill W. was the principal author of the Big Book and the sole author of the 12 and 12. On page 17 of the 12 and 12, Bill stated, "The book, Alcoholics Anonymous, became the basic text of the fellowship, and it still is. This present volume proposes to broaden and deepen the understanding of the 12 steps as first written in the earlier work." By saying this, Bill indicates that the directions for the 12 steps are only in the Big Book, not in the 12 and 12.
Then, in the late 60s, we started participation meetings that failed to stick with our singleness of purpose. So by 1980, we had dropped to 33%. The result of which is we started ignoring the practice of focusing on our solution, and we drifted into group therapy. For recent years, our success rate has decreased to what appears to be less than 5% for those who are finding as much as 5 years of sobriety.
While there has been a dramatic change in our fellowship, the program has remained unchanged. Consequently, the 4th edition reads the same as the 1st edition.
And let's go to page 30. It will be the middle paragraph. It is going to start with 2 sentences. And Cap, would you be so kind to read that for us, starting with "We learned"?
We learned we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholic. This is the first step in recovery.
In our heart of hearts, we must know that we are victims of a killer disease before we can begin recovery.
And let's return to the doctor's opinion. Page XXVII. And the first 2 paragraphs, the doctor writes, Heather, could you read those 2 paragraphs, please?
We have Alcoholics Anonymous.
The subject presented. XXVII, doctor's opinion.
The subject presented in this book seems to me to be of paramount importance to those afflicted with alcoholic addiction.
One more.
I say this after many years' experience as a medical director of one of the oldest hospitals in the country treating alcoholic and drug addiction.
We make you guys work at turning pages tonight. We identify who Dr. Silkworth was and how he ended up at Towns Hospital, how his opinion opened the door for recovery. Until we understand a problem, we cannot find a solution. I use an example of walking out to my car, putting the key in the ignition, and the damn thing won't start. Problem. I can sit on my butt and talk about the car not starting until hell freezes over, but that will get me nowhere. I look under the hood and see that the battery cable has corroded. I know what the problem is. So the solution becomes very evident. I need a new battery cable, but that does not solve my problem. I still must take the action necessary to obtain a new cable, replace the bad one, and now I'm on my way. Understand the problem, know what the solution is, and then take the action to make the solution a reality.
So from the first paragraph on page XXVII, we present the allergy which makes us powerless over alcohol. So XXVIII. Heather, the first sentence, please.
We believe and so suggested a few years ago that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker.
The phenomenon of craving, which is a manifestation of the allergy.
And the last paragraph on page XXVIII is where we find the initial information regarding the unmanageability. The alcoholic mind cannot distinguish the truth from the false. Kat, if you would read the whole paragraph starting with men and women, please.
Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that, while they admit it is injurious, they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented, unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful, with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery.
We carefully dissect the whole paragraph. First, what is the effect alcoholic men and women get from drinking alcohol?
Why is it so important that we have this spiritual event occur in our lives? Well, Dr. Silkworth said that we drink essentially because we like the effect produced by alcohol. What is the effect an alcoholic gets from drinking? When we alcoholics had a few drinks, we were amazed at the change in the way we thought and the way we felt. A few drinks produced an entire psychic change.
Now here comes the fun part. Let's go to page 83 in the Big Book and examine the 9-step promises, beginning each promise with the phrase, "When I had a few drinks." Read each line in the first person in the past tense. For example, the first promise would be, "When I had a few drinks." If I was painstaking about this phase of my development, I was amazed before I was halfway through. Sassy, could you do the second promise like that for us, please?
When I had a few drinks, I knew a new freedom and a new happiness.
Did you?
I sure did.
Kat?
When I had a few drinks, I didn't regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it.
Did you ever come out of a blackout in a place you hadn't planned on visiting, with people you hadn't planned on being with, and learn you had done some things you wish you hadn't done? Because of the guilt and remorse, it was to be a secret. And then go into a bar and have a few drinks and tell some stranger the whole story.
I certainly did.
Sassy?
When I had a few drinks, I comprehended the word serenity and I knew peace.
Did you too find that serenity and peace of mind replaced the turmoil with a few drinks?
Oh, yeah. Kat?
Had a few drinks, no matter how far down the scale I had gone, I could see how my experience would benefit others.
How willing were you to share your life's whole story with a poor drunk who had just really had a bad experience?
I'd love to talk about how bad my life was.
When I had a few drinks, that feeling of uselessness and self-pity would disappear.
With a few drinks, did you feel that you just might really have a purpose in this world and feel sorry for those critters that didn't have what you had? although you just weren't too sure what it was that you had?
Almost every time, Cat.
When I had a few drinks, I lost interest in selfish things and gained interest in my fellows.
Did a few drinks make you a little more interested in people, especially of the opposite sex?
Can I buy you a drink, honey?
When I had a few drinks, self-seeking slipped away.
Did a few drinks make you somewhat generous?
Drinks for everyone!
When I had a few drinks, my whole attitude and outlook upon life changed.
Did a few drinks take you from a gray, gloomy day to one that was bright and hopeful?
From a shade of brown to rosy pink with just a couple.
When I had a few drinks, fear of people and financial insecurity left me.
Did you enjoy being in the company of people sober?
Leave me alone!
Did a few drinks diminish your concern for your financial difficulties?
How am I gonna pay all these bills? I think I better have a few drinks and figure that out.
When I had a few drinks, I intuitively knew how to handle situations that used to baffle me. Oh, sorry, that was your part.
Well, good. Make her read the other part then.
Did you too find that you were able to think much more clearly and wisely with a few drinks?
You bet. I had answers to questions that hadn't even been asked yet.
I love doing it that way. The unmanageability is clearly presented in the last sentence of that paragraph.
I will suddenly realize that booze is doing for me what I could not do for myself.
From the article, Ways to Stop Drinking, you can get some ideas of how we apply the information Dr. Silkworth proposed.
The newcomer is also reminded that they need to be mindful of over-the-counter meds, such as cough syrup, mouthwash, flavor extracts, etc., and that their healthcare providers should know they were alcoholics, so the professionals will be mindful of what they prescribe. We emphasize that they themselves are responsible for their sobriety, so be honest with those who have a need to know. We should also be aware of supplements and the ingredients listed. Just because it says healthy doesn't mean it is safe for us. Some of the ingredients may trigger cravings. Some supplements do contain alcohol as a soluble base. No matter how long we have been sober, alcohol in any form can be deadly. It can be very easy to over-medicate when self-medicating.
We have now helped the newcomer understand the problem. We may now breeze through Bill's story by looking at the events that describe the progression of alcoholism in his life. And I think we are up to Sassy, and if everyone will turn to page 2, we're done with all that confusing Roman numeral stuff now. And Sassy, it will be the middle of the first paragraph, approximately 10 lines down from the top of the page. One sentence, please.
Though my drinking was not yet continuous, it disturbed my life.
Lois is on his ass about his drinking.
And Kat, to the bottom of page 3, the last sentence, please. I began
to be jittery in the morning.
Bill was beginning to be jittery in the morning.
Let's move to page 5. Give everybody a second to get there. And Sassy, it will be the first sentence, starting with liquor.
Liquor ceased to be a luxury, it became a necessity.
Liquor ceased to be a luxury, it became a necessity. He's lying about his drinking, hiding his bottles, etc.
And a little further down page 5, Kat, the third paragraph, 4 sentences starting with Then I got
a promising business opportunity. Stocks were at the low point of 1932, and I had somehow formed a group to buy. I was to share generously in the profits. Then I went on a prodigious bender, and that chance vanished.
Bill lost an opportunity to make some money because he drank.
And still on page 5, fourth paragraph, 4 sentences, Sassy, starting with I woke.
I woke up. This had to be stopped. I saw I could not take so much as one drink. I was through forever.
He made up his mind to never touch another drop.
And finishing out page 5 in the 5th paragraph, 3 sentences, Kat, starting with shortly afterward.
Shortly afterward, I came home drunk. There had been no fight. Where had been my high resolve?
Bill returned home drunk.
And moving into page 7, we will go to the end of the first full paragraph. And sassy, it will be one sentence starting with best of all.
Best of all, I met a kind doctor who explained that though certainly selfish and foolish, I had been seriously ill, bodily and mentally.
Bill met Dr. Silkworth and learned what was wrong with him.
And Kat, on page 8, the first paragraph, 4 sentences starting with the word quicksand.
Quicksand stretched around me in all directions. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master.
Bill surrendered to the problem. Step 1.
We use the next paragraph to exemplify the simplicity of our program. Sassy, first sentence starting with trembling.
Trembling, I stepped from the hospital, a broken man.
And staying with sassy, the last sentence, I was to know.
I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes.
A wonderful life as the result of having taken the action Ebby had prescribed for him.
And turning over to page 10, we're going to read the bottom paragraph, the last paragraph in page 10, and the first paragraph on page 11. And Kat, it starts with when they talked.
When they talked of a God personal to me, who was love, superhuman strength and direction, I became irritated and my mind snapped shut against such a theory. To Christ I conceded the certainty of a great man, not too closely followed by those who claimed him. His moral teaching most excellent. For myself, I had adopted those parts which seemed convenient and not too difficult. The rest I disregarded.
Bill's rebellion at the idea of a spiritual solution, identifying him as a hard-nosed agnostic.
And we move into page 12, folks. Give you a second to get there. And sassy, it will be 2 sentences starting with my friend.
My friend suggested what then seemed a novel idea. He said, "Why don't you choose your own conception of God?"
The freedom and responsibility we are given to develop an idea of God that we can begin to bet our life on.
We then explained the simplicity of step 2 by the fact that Bill saw his old drinking buddy, who was supposedly in the nut house for alcoholic insanity, sober. Both of them had been powerless over alcohol, but Ebby was sober and Bill was going to die. Ebby had found the power that Bill was unaware of. Ebby gave Bill hope, the beginning of coming to believe. From that hope, Bill finally became willing to try Ebby's plan of action. Again, the idea of step 2.
And let's move to page 13. And it will be in the first paragraph, 1 sentence, sassy at the hospital.
I was separated from alcohol for the last time.
Thank you. Entering Towns Hospital on December 11th, 1934, going into DT's, taking step 3 on the 3rd day of his sobriety. Ebby visiting him in the hospital on the 4th and 5th days to help Bill take the action Ebby had learned to apply to his life, the result of which was a spiritual experience. Bill left the hospital on December 18th, 1934, at the end of 7 days and lived 36 years without taking another drink. We are here because of the action that Bill took, not the meetings he attended.
We now identify the meaning of step 1. Powerless because of the allergy, unmanageability due to the mind that cannot remember that we have the allergy. It can only remember the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks.
Relieving the feeling of restlessness, irritability, and discontentedness.
Therefore, we are powerless over our body and powerless over our mind where alcohol is concerned. We are screwed.
True, true, true. Page 24, folks. And Kat, I believe it's your turn. It will be in the second paragraph. Squiggly writing, please, starting with the fact.
The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink.
And Sassy, flipping all the way to page 43. If you could read that last paragraph when you get there, starting with once more.
Once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink, except in a few rare cases. Neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a higher power.
I would like to thank both of our readers, Kat and Sassy, for helping us out tonight, and we will continue on. Thank you so much for your service. From the hope of hearing a recovered alcoholic tell their story of what they were like, what happened, and what they are like now, or reading the 44 personal stories in the Big Book, is the beginning of step 2. If lack of power is the problem, then a power greater than ourselves must be the solution. And we see that the recovered alcoholic has found that power. It takes no great mind to see that if lack of power or powerlessness is my problem, then a power greater than myself must be the solution. Once I can see that, I am faced with a very simple decision. Am I or am I not willing to follow the clear-cut directions for recovery? But I need someone who knows how to do this, aka a sponsor.
So the simplicity of step 3 is to turn my will and my life over to the care of the God of my understanding. I learned how to turn my will and my life over to this power by taking steps 4 through 7. But I need someone, a sponsor, who has a working knowledge of taking the steps as directed in the book, who can guide me through this process.
To determine if you have made a good choice in sponsors, it's pretty easy to tell. If they suggest that you open your Big Book or offer to read with you from page XI and study to page 43, that is a good start in diagnosing step 1. These 51 pages will get you ready to see if you are ready to move on. Look at the first sentence on page 44.
In the preceding chapters, you have learned something of alcoholism. We hope we made it clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic.
Oh, sorry. I was reading below. It tells you why it is so important to be thorough in your study to this point. From this study, we can separate the alcoholic from the non-alcoholic, which is so vital to the success of your group and AA as a whole.
Now, take the test. If, when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely.
How many of you have promised you'd never do it again? Appears you've failed to manage that decision, so your life is unmanageable where alcohol is concerned.
Or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take.
How many of you cannot start drinking without getting drunk, it would appear that you too are powerless over alcohol. Step 1.
If that is the case, you may be suffering from an illness,
Chronic alcoholism of the hopeless variety.
which only a spiritual experience will conquer.
How many meetings must you attend to have a spiritual experience? Or how many steps must you take to have this blessed promise become a reality in your life?
Page 44 through page 57 will open the door for you to be able to consider your own conception of the God of your understanding.
Page 58 answers that stupid comment that we hear too often in meetings. I don't know how it works. The first sentence tells us how it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. And it goes on to say, those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. In other words, we need to follow the clear-cut directions in the Big Book.
The program of Alcoholics Anonymous is a spiritual program. On page 59, we will find the first of several prayers. We asked His protection and care with complete abandon. There are one or more prayers for each and every step from step 3 through step 12, which reminds us that the God of our understanding is the source of our recovery. We learn to invite Him to be the solution to all our problems.
On page 62, we are told that our real problem is selfishness, self-centeredness, but we can never see it without some method of revealing the truth to us. So we make a decision to do precisely what our sponsor suggests and announce that decision in the prayer presented on page 63. This prayer is the invitation to God to come into our lives.
One of the beautiful things about the Big Book is that it will tell us when to take a step, how to take the step, what the results or promises of having taken the step will be, and provides us with the prayers that make certain we are inviting the God of our understanding to be very involved in our recovery.
The last sentence on page 63 tells us that we now have to get busy and take the rest of the steps.
Steps 4 and 5 are diagnostic steps to learn if what they told us on page 62
Selfishness and self-centeredness
is true for us. The clear-cut directions for step 4 are found from pages 64 through 71, and there are 5 prayers for step 4.
On page 75, we find the clear-cut directions for step 5 and 2 fifth-step prayers.
On page 76, we find the direction for step 6, which is nothing more than a commitment to God that we will become students and practitioners of the rest of the Big Book. And there we will find the 6th step prayer.
On page 76, we find the 7th step prayer, which is to be prayed after we have done our part, steps 4 through 6. Now we ask God to please do your part by making me different. This prayer is a completion of the prayer that we started on page 63. This is where we find the Amen and finish the prayer. This is a cycle of 5 steps which started with the 3rd step prayer and finishes with the 7th step prayer.
On page 76, we will be most pleased to learn that if we have carefully followed the directions in taking step 4, that step 8 is all but a done deal.
From page 76 to page 83, the directions for taking step 9 and 4 ninth step prayers are there.
Having carefully followed the path the 100 laid down for us, we have had a spiritual awakening or experience and have joined the first 100 as recovered alcoholics. The 9th step promises describe that blessed event.
On page 64, we will take the first action to recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. By the time we get to page 83, we have recovered. We have joined the first 100. We have been given the power that we lack to survive alcoholism. Carefully following the clear-cut directions outlined in just 20 pages of our basic text produces the miracle of recovery.
We are now to start our spiritual growth, and that occurs in steps 10, 11, and 12.
The clear-cut directions for step 10 are contained in the paragraph on page 84, beginning with, "We continued."
A running start for learning how to communicate with the God of your understanding is very adequately covered on pages 86, 87, and 88.
And now that we have received the power, it is our primary job to pass that on to the next newcomer God puts in our lives. The clear-cut directions for sponsorship are contained in Chapter 7. But you won't find the 12-step prayer until you have reached the last page of the basic text. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick.
There you have it. Utterly simple, yet so garbled in our meetings. I challenge you to be a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. The simplest guide that I follow in working with others is, if it isn't in the big book, they don't need to be exposed to it.
I love this part. I love this closing part. If you are encouraged to wait until you have a better understanding of what our program is about, I have one question for you. How well did you like sex before you tried it? Well, you won't know a damn thing about recovery either until you have taken the action of taking the steps precisely as they were given to us. And that is the Foundations meeting, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm now open for comments, questions, experiences.
Observations.
That's the word I was looking for.
Wow.
We told you it'd be a little hopscotch.
Yeah. It was a little much for this right here, but I absorbed a lot of it. And I am glad I came.
Wonderful.
This is the instructions. This is it.
It is.
All I need. This and God. And Trish and all of you.
Ah, thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
Glad to have you here. You know, that 51 pages from the doctor's opinion to page 44 are all about step 1. From 44 to page 63, until we get to the third step prayer, are all about step 2 and leading us into step 3. So from 63 to page 71 are all about just steps 3 and 4. And the chapter, how it works, only tells us how to do 2 things. How to take steps 3 and 4. Gives us the prayers we'll use, the actions we'll take, and the promises that will result from the prayers and actions. So here's what I love. The next 16 pages in the chapter Into Action, 16 pages in all, takes us through the next 7 steps in just 16 pages. The truth is it doesn't matter what steps we try and take, 4 through 9, if we don't have a solid first step and are thoroughly convinced, chances are we won't stay in Alcoholics Anonymous. Just a thought. Hi, Jim.
Hey everybody. Yeah, this was really interesting the way you guys did this. I kind of had an easy time kind of going along with it because I still have a book that I've had from years ago when I went through it with my sponsor, and he actually had me write out a lot of the, step 2, part 2. So as I was flipping through, I could see where pretty much tell, okay, here's step 2, and I could tell where you guys were going to start reading. So it made it a little easier flipping around for me. But as you could see, if you were looking at me, I'm still highlighting stuff and finding stuff all the time and making more notes in my book. It's funny because I see a lot of people when they first see the big book and they're like, wow, no wonder they call it a big book. But like we say, it's only the first, 144 pages that we actually need.
164 plus the doctor's
164, I'm sorry, right? And then the rest of the stories, which were all fantastic, but I love the way the book is laid out. I really do. It's just, like it says, it's clear and concise. And I love going back over it and rereading it every bit. I'm always finding more to mark out and make notes in the margins and everything. I really appreciate you guys going through the forwards too. A lot of places you don't go through the forwards, especially with a few of the sponsors that I've worked with. They'd touch on them when they were talking, but they never, had you go and read them. And there's a lot of information in there. There really is that can kind of help you decide whether you really want to take this route or not. I mean, it's all proof. It proves to me who I am, or at least who I'm trying not to be anymore. I'm an alcoholic. I know that. I have this book has definitely convinced me. And you'd be surprised how many times I had to read it to really actually figure that out. That, oh yes, I really am an alcoholic. How many times I read this and read about, the allergy and everything, and just, I don't know, I must have skimmed right over it a million times. One day I read it and I went, that's it. When I drink, I crave more, and I can't stop. Why do I drink if I keep craving more? Because it's up in here. Because I think first, that's why. I think and then I drink. And then I drink and I can't stop. It's an amazing sickness, it really is. Amazing disease. And I'm looking forward to going through the book again. Here. Make some real progress this time.
Well, thank you for being here, brother. And
no problem.
It's one of the things that I love about this group is we don't miss a word.
Verb made from sentence.
Okay, the other two belong to you, so I'll let you call on them, Trish.
Your turn.
Oh, and Terry, I saw she was out of her camera. I was totally missing it.
I gotcha. I could hear every word. And Terry alcoholic, pickle chip. Yeah, I like how we go through every word because our lives depend on it. If we start resting on our laurels, as they say, then we get closer to that disease. And I'm always scared when I read the part that only 5% of us find more than 5 years of sobriety. Every time we cover that, I go, could that be right? Because I know so many people with multiple years, but that's a sobering fact to me. I also always love the part that Trish says, "Can I buy you a drink, honey?"
Yeah, right.
Wait for it. It's just like that delightful. I just love that. And another part that I loved, and I'll never get tired of, is that when Bill walked out of the hospital and never had another drink and had, what is it, 36 years of sobriety. I love that. You know, he walked out of that hospital a free man. And I just always perk up when we reach that part. Um, this is a great study, and I'm glad that Jim and Lisa got to hear it for the first time. And I know it's a little overwhelming, it was for me. But I keep coming back every month to hear it again. And thank you, Heather and Cap, for doing the reading tonight. You did beautifully. So even though I've heard it, 4 years of coming here, 3 or 4 years of coming here, it never gets old. And I may not be on camera, but I'm here and I'm listening with these babies on. Because it's important, and it's important that I hang on to my sobriety when times are tough. And this gives me the motivation to understand that I am an alcoholic that has an allergy, and any time that I decide to take a drink, that allergy is going to come back and bite me in the butt. And I'm not willing to do that. So I've seen too many people go out and never come back. So I'm delighted to be here, as always. I look forward to this meeting, so thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Trish. Glad you are here. And there's something else that I really love about in the readings and in the comments, and Trish and I went through and added some other comments today to expand a little more on it. One of the things that I love that it talks about is that Bill stayed sober, following the directions that he was given by Ebby. I also love the part that it says, we are here because of the steps that Bill Wilson took, not the meetings he made. And what is the significance, importance of that? Because back then there weren't any meetings yet. There were absolutely no meetings, and the ones that there were very, very few. We were a fledgling society at that time. Today, in today's world, we use terms like meeting makers make it 90 and 90. And you know what? So many people don't take the steps. They stay sober on fellowship. And Terry, that would go to answer the question of why we are down to a 5% recovery rate for long-term sobriety. I mean, think about it. How many people do you know with long-term sobriety suffering from untreated alcoholism just because they don't drink? Our program has so much more to offer. Okay, Trish, I'll shut up now.
Hi, Kat. Hi, I'm Kat. I'm an alcoholic. And, yeah, I really love this study. It makes it very, very clear and understandable and just easier. Yeah, like Terry said, it's just the truth, it's the truth of the matter. And Jim said it just talks about the way it is, And a lot of things jumped out at me, but especially how fast they take Bill through the steps, and like Jamie was just referring to, meeting makers make it. I have 41 days today, but I've been coming around this program for decades. And that's what they said. 90 meetings in 90 days, do this, do that, and sit down and shut up and stuff like that. And not really going through the stuff, I mean, I guess I could have requested more step work along the line or something, but it was just, different, and which is why I love how this group in your big book studies too. It's just the way that you word things and make it easy to understand and follow those directions that are in the book. Because that's the other thing. It was the 12 and 12 and other literature. What was the other popular one? Like sober living, like the yellow one, what to do in sobriety and all of that. And, I didn't stay sober that way. So anyway, this time I am actually doing things a little bit differently. It's only been, a couple decades, but recently I was finally honest with my doctor for the first time ever about the fact that I was an alcoholic and that I had a huge history of it. Never did that before, so that was a first, a very huge first for me, because I hate to be judged by people, and I felt that judgment, so it was hard to open that door and say, yeah, no, I am, and I've only been sober this long. And she, she turned around and she said, hey, congratulations, that's great, Miss Donna. Oh, cat. And it was cool, and then also, I'm also getting over this nasty bronchitis infection, and what I used to take along with things that I was prescribed today, which I did not request, was, an over-the-counter cough syrup that included, an opiate that they usually prescribe for coughs, and I know that that's, I've already tossed out any of those, things like NyQuil and stuff like that, but that's a huge thing, because I would have totally self-medicated on some codeine and cough syrup, just a few months ago, probably, so along with drinking with it. So, and I'm going through the steps faster than I ever have. So, I'm really looking forward to this process and having a totally new experience. So thank you.
Thanks, Kat.
Thanks, Kat.
Heather.
Hi, I'm Heather. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I like this. I like that it gives us a set of tools, a roadmap, if you will, tools for living. The foundation, I found God through you guys. I built that relationship over time. It's transitioned and transformed into different things that it works for me. It's my own conception, right? And I love that. I didn't have to choose anybody else's. And I love that all of the promises came true for me. Because when I first walked in the doors, I didn't think that they could. I thought maybe a couple here and there, maybe that one or maybe that one. But the longer I stayed, the more of them came true. And I knew peace and I knew happiness and I knew freedom. And it had nothing to do what was going on outside of my life, because my outside world could be going on and having different things happen. It was my insides. It wasn't just that physical sobriety, right? It was that emotional and mental sobriety. It was being able to come here and to listen to you guys and to be able to share. Going through the book with the sponsor, being able to do it with other people, knowing that I didn't mean to worry about my life anymore, because I had found a power greater than myself. And no matter the pickle I found myself in, I always had a solution for any pickle that came my way. Because I'm like, okay, well, I'm going through this. What do I do? Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to turn it over to God. All right. Well, okay. Well, I'm going through this. What am I going to do? Okay. Well, my solution, still God, still my higher power, right? Still turning everything over in that surrender. Sometimes when I have a lot of things going on, the surrender and the faith gets a little harder. So I use a little bit of visualization to connect with my higher power. And I actually have to visualize falling back in a pool and surrendering to my higher power. And I love that you guys helped me to be able to do that. I wouldn't have had that before I got here. So I'm really grateful that I am here and that you guys have taught me things over time that have helped in my recovery. I love you for it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Sassy. Jacob, welcome. We had tonight what's called a foundations meeting where we do a hopscotch through the book and present some things. And we're sorry that you missed it, but Trish has posted some of our other meetings in the chat, which you are welcome to take screenshots of or copy and save. And please join us. And would you like to come in and share with us tonight?
Hey, I'm Jacob. I'm an alcoholic.
Welcome.
So my probation is actually making me do this, but I do enjoy listening and talking and stuff. But alcohol wasn't actually my problem. It was more narcotics. But I'm just here listening. I don't really have much to say.
Thank you. We are glad that you're with us, and please come back and join us anytime. And some of us, not all of us are pure alcoholic in this room. Certainly not me. I qualify for lots of non-conference approved substances. So we're glad you're here, and you can come back and keep joining us. Trish, we can go ahead and close it out with the prayer and then stay open and talk. Oh, wait. Oh, you want to share. You want to share. You've been talking all night. No, go ahead.
I'm Trish. I'm an alcoholic. You are tired.
I am.
And, I can really relate to where it talks. Let me see if I can find it in the script. When Bill published the 12 and 12, and then our percentage of people recovering went down, and even Bill commented in the 12 and 12 that AA is the basic text. That's where we find our directions on how to take the steps and how to do the work. And that the 12 and 12 is just to broaden and deepen the understanding of what had already been written in the big book. But that was my first sponsor, and my second sponsor, and my third. I can't count the number of sponsors I had. None of them referred me into the book. My first one said, read step 12, or read step 1 in the 12 and 12 every day for 30 days. I could practically repeat the thing ad nauseum, word for word. But we never got together and talked about what it meant and what I was supposed to do with that knowledge. And then I moved and I got another sponsor, and we didn't get into the steps. And there was a lot of the step work that I did in the beginning, I muddled through on my own, hoping that I did it right, talking to people at after step meetings and getting some direction. And I love how it points out in here, you've made a good choice in sponsor if your sponsor tells you to sit down and read together the doctor's opinion through page 43. because that's a good way of diagnosing step one, and those 51 pages will get you ready to see if you're ready to move on. And then moving forward in the book, reading We Agnostics to get that step 2 down, and then moving on how it works, step 3, step 4. I had big book studies as home groups, but I never really had until I started coming to this group. And our Tuesday night meeting and my sponsor never had a whole lot of push into the book to see what was there, to talk about what was there. I could read it, I could understand what was in it, I could look words up in the dictionary, but there was never a conversation of what does this really all mean to me? How is knowing this going to keep me sober? And then by getting into the book, by learning what's in the book, I'm then able to do exactly what it says. I can take the information I have and use it with the next newcomer that God puts in my life. And because up until then, people would ask me to be their sponsor, I would say yes, but I was afraid to death. I was going to screw them up because I knew I hadn't read the book and I hadn't taken the steps the way the book was written. But once I got into the book and once I started taking the steps as the book directs, I'm a lot more confident in what I'm doing in the book and a lot more able to direct other people through the book. And that's only by getting in the book with somebody who knows what's in the book. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Trish. There's something else that comes to mind when we were going through those numbers of recovery rates and what Bill had hammered out in the foreword to the second edition of those who came to AA, 50% sobered up at once and so on. One of the reasons that we put that in there about the Cleveland groups running at a 92% success rate is because they used Big Book sponsorship. Clarence Schneider, who was one of Dr. Bob's sponsees, there was this point in time before the book was written when everybody was trying to duplicate what Bill and Bob did, and they couldn't do it, and they weren't having the same results. And so the book became the pathway to guide people down to help them take the steps. And it's been said that Clarence went to Dr. Bob and says, well, we've got the book now, so we have a pathway. We're going to sit down over at Jim's house every Tuesday night, and we're going to take people through the book. Dr. Bob was like, oh, no, you're not. This is the way we do it. We drag the drunks in off the street, we sit them down, we make them go through this process first. And Clarence said, no, you've given us the guidance to the solution. So they would sit down in the Cleveland groups, and they would go through the book just like we do, line by line, take other alcoholics through the book. It has been one of the great inspirations that has led us in this group to become a Big Book sponsorship group. It's something that we do, and it's the way that we work with others. And here's a great thing. I don't know if you guys have ever had sponsors tell you to do things that could not be reconciled with what the Big Book has to say. But I've heard plenty of them say stuff that's got nothing to do with the book. Oh, you need to do this. Oh, you gotta. When I read the chapter working with others, there is not one place in the chapter working with others that tells me I get to tell you, you gotta. There is not one place in there. What it does is I use the example of my own life and my own experience, telling them what I did, where my alcoholism was at and how I have found recovery. And if they're interested, then we go farther. The chapter Working with Others gives us such a great guidance and perspective on how to do all of this. You know, I say it all the time about this group. I believe that we are a teaching group that learns together. And we are sometimes teachers, always students, and never experts on any of it, because we're all learning. And what that has turned us into in this group is just a bunch of God's kids trying to help out a bunch of God's other kids learn how to live sober one day at a time. And here's a little something I've learned in my journey. If I read all of the black letters on the white pages in the big blue book, I just might get this thing. And it won't be necessary for me to pick up a drink to solve my problems. Somebody mentioned emotional sobriety. So I will touch on the 12 and 12 for a second. In the 12 and 12, in step 12, in the first page and a half somewhere there, Bill refers to the first 11 steps of being the pathway to emotional sobriety. While Bill had this incredible white light experience, and we know from reading the spiritual experience that oftentimes it comes more slowly to the rest of us in the form of a spiritual awakening. Here's what I absolutely have come to believe and understand. That as I take each individual step, including step 1, the admission of my alcoholism and my powerlessness and unmanageability over that, and Doji's dreaming, in case you can't tell. What happens is I have a spiritual experience with each one of the steps individually. And by the time I get to step 12, where it says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, what has happened is I have had 11 individual, collective spiritual experiences that have awakened my sleeping spirit. And I think that's a pretty profound thing. So if I look at every step, including step 1 and step 2, being spiritual in nature, I get to have this great, wonderful experience. Trish and I were going through the book when we were doing a little editing on this today, and we threw in one line of it. But I'll throw this in because it said that it all starts with a prayer on page 59. The prayer is, we ask His protection and care with complete abandon. That's the only prayer on page 59. But here's what's significant, and the context around it is what matters. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. What is the turning point? Step 3. So we ask His protection and care with complete abandon. I know how well I manage my life. Here's the thing. Anybody besides me ever swear they'd never do it again? I did. Hundreds of times. Hundreds of times. And within a matter of minutes or hours, I would not only be doing it again, but probably where I was or way past where I was. So the simplicity of the unmanageability is simply this. I failed to manage the decision to never do it again. Didn't matter I wasn't taking showers. Didn't matter that I couldn't hold a job. I'll fix myself food or any of those things. That wasn't the real unmanageability. The real unmanageability was the failure to manage the decision. I'll never do that again. Every time the cops come running at me with 7 guns pointed at my head, I always said, I never want to do that again. But it happened a few times along the journey. So, you know, glad you are all here. Pickle Chips, you want to take us out with the prayer?
I sure can. I'm Pickle Chips. Let's have a moment of silence for those that are still suffering from this horrible disease. Oh, Jacob, since you haven't been here before this, since we can't physically hold hands, we hold our hands up to the screen like this and do, there you go, a virtual holding hands. Okay, after a moment of silence for the alcoholic and addict who still suffers out there, will you join me in the Lord's Prayer? Who takes us from shame to glory, if we let him. Our Father,
who art in
who art in heaven,
hallowed be thy name.
hallowed be thy name.
Thy kingdom
Thy
come,
kingdom come,
thy will
thy
be
will
done,
be done
on earth
on earth
as it is in the
as it
heavens.
is in heaven.
Give us this day
Give us this day
our daily bread,
daily bread,
and forgive us our trespasses,
as we forgive those who trespass against us.
and lead us
Not
not
into
into
temptation,
temptation,
but deliver us
from evil.
For thine is the kingdom,
kingdom,
the power, and the glory,
and the glory
forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much. Thanks for staying up with us, folks.